It's January 26th, 1913, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
In 1913, the US Postal Service started offering parcel delivery for the first time as long as the package weighed less than 11 pounds. We don't know who was the first person to look at their baby and think, I wonder if... But we do know the first people to put it into action, Jesse and Matilda Beagle, an Ohio couple who sent the first ever baby by mail today in history in 1913.
And when I first heard about this, a baby being sent in the mail, I was thinking, that's child abuse. That wouldn't happen today. This is absurd. But then I read the detail, which is that this baby, James, this 10-month-old, got posted to his grandmother, who lived 1 mile away, by a rural free delivery carrier. So therefore someone that they would have known because he came by their house every day. And I thought to myself, okay, like things haven't changed that much since 1913. This is either A, a publicity stunt, or B, his mum's mate having some fun. And it's kind of a bit of both, isn't it? But it's not really posting a baby in the mail, is it?
Yeah.
To ask the postman to deliver your son a mile up the road to his grandmother.
Yeah, and the other important detail is that the baby in question and subsequent babies, because this became a bit of a thing, they weren't packaged into boxes with stamps stuck on them and like a little breathing hole stuck inside.
Yeah, 3 pencil holes in the back to make sure they're okay.
Whoop, not there. Whoa, yeah. But they were actually handed over to the postman, and that postman then diligently went this short amount of distance, usually, until they could deliver them to someone who, and I think this is also important, was often known to them. The postal workers were kind of members of the community, so this was kind of just a cheap way to get your kid around. But,
get the publicity, as I was saying, like what better way to illustrate that the Postal Service now delivers packages that weigh more than £4 than a fun picture of a baby in a postal sack.
And the story quickly made newspapers, and for the next few years, similar stories would occasionally surface as other parents followed suit. I think getting in on the fun, but also probably local areas going, we need to make our postal service more known to our local people and what they can do.
And I think part of the publicity that these things attracted was because the US was in the grip of a kind of hard to imagine from our perspective, like Parcel Fever.
Yes.
Until 1913, if you wanted a parcel delivered in the US, you had to arrange that. The Postal Service only concerned itself with letters, so you had to use private courier companies who, not too different from now, predictably gouged customers as much as possible. And this became such a sore topic, especially because you're starting to see the rise of mail order catalogs, meaning that rural Americans were participating in consumerism a lot more than they had been before. They wanted things delivered to their door. So amid all this mounting pressure, Congress voted that from the 1st of January 1913, the Postal Service would accept parcels. There were some size and weight limitations, as I alluded to, but crucially, although the Postal Service did have a rule saying that bugs and bees are the only live animals that you could transport by the post, it didn't explicitly say no babies. You would assume because that was not necessary to say, but it was indeed. So as the Parcel Service increased its size and weight limits, which it did quite quickly because the service was so popular, you guessed it, parents started posting larger and larger children. I can't believe that I'm saying this.
Yeah. The most famous example, or as the internet would have it these days, a real-life Flat Stanley, was Charlotte May Pierstoff, who was mailed via train from her home in Grangeville, Idaho, to her grandparents' house, which was, in her case, 3 hours and 73 miles away. So that is quite a long way to send a girl who at that time was 4 years old. This is in 1914. And the reported cost of the postage stamps, 55 cents, was cheaper than the train ticket would have been. It would have been $1.55, which supposedly her parents couldn't afford. And supposedly the stamps were attached to her coat. And supposedly, because all this got turned into a charming children's book called Mailing May afterwards, and the story became quite legendary, she was stamped and tagged on the back of her coat as a 54-pound baby chick. But again, if you look into the details, turns out she was sent with her cousin, who was a postal clerk. So again, she wasn't with someone she didn't know. She was with her family the whole time. And also, this was before baby chicks were even a category in the postal system. So if that happened, it wasn't an official label. It was a cutesy fairy tale.
Yeah, and of course, there was a novelty factor was very obvious even at the time. Speaking about May Pierstoff's journey, the Idaho County Free Press noted, "It is hardly probable that this mode of transportation will become universally popular." Understating it.
Well, also there was this race of firsts after Parcel Post was launched, because when the thing came into place at the stroke of midnight on January the 1st, 1913, Postmaster Edward M. Morgan of New York City and Postmaster General Hitchcock both dropped packages addressed to each other into the mail, racing to be the first to use the service. And they weren't the only people doing this. There was another team, as it turns out, taking part in this, and they actually won the race to be the first to get something delivered.
The race. The 4-day pause whilst you wait for someone to deliver something across the country.
Well, not quite, actually. It was 11 pounds of apples that were sent to New Jersey Governor and President-elect Woodrow Wilson. It was sent by the Woodrow Wilson Club of Princeton.
What a bunch of suck-ups. An apple for the teacher or 11 pounds of apples for the President-elect.
Surely Wilson would have liked you to give it to the poor and needy.
Yeah. Anyway, they dropped these apples into the local post office at precisely 12:01, and by pre-arrangement, the carrier then picked up the parcel reportedly before the ink was dry and set off, driving furiously down a muddy street for the President-elect's home. He delivered the apples at 12:04 a.m., so it took him precisely 3 minutes to get from where they were sent to where they were being delivered.
This is a country that is desperately in need of TV being invented.
Right, exactly. And that's the point of it. This is technology, is the point, right? In 1913, this is exciting technology. So the analog would be to think of something like when generative AI first landed in our laps, and you were like, I'm going to ask it to book me a holiday. I'm going to ask it to write me a poem. Completely unnecessary stuff that you didn't need, but it's just like, I can ask it anything. I'm going to do this and this and this. There was this frenzy of like, let's post everything because you can, and I can afford it.
Yeah, during the first 5 days of its service, over 1,500 post offices reported handling more than 4 million post packages. So people just went entirely mad for this new technology. They were like, I have to be in on this.
To be fair, they didn't offer the service before, so they probably had a big backlog of things that they wanted to post.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of these, babies posted by mail cases were just more sort of novelty stunts along these lines. But a handful did go a little bit further, and the longest distance a child ever travelled as an official package of the US Postal Service was a 6-year-old called Edna Neff. And this is, it was kind of a sad one. It sounds like part of a very odd custody swap. Her parents were divorced, right? Her mother lived in Pensacola, Florida, and she had to send Edna to her father's house in Christiansburg, Virginia, but she didn't have enough money to send her on the train. So what happened is that I think it was a probation officer in the end stepped in and offered to pay 15 cents of postage to send her more than 700 miles. She travelled alone with her father's address and 15 cents worth of postage stamps pinned to her shirt. I think this kind of taps into why the Postal Service did start to take issue with this, because as we've alluded to, most of these children were very safe. They were, in the hands of a family friend, sometimes even a relative.
Well, probably safer than they'd be on the train network in 1913 by yourself as a 6-year-old.
Well, the thing that was causing problems for the Postal Service wasn't that children were being, thrown in the mail coach, but the fact that it was kind of undercutting the train services because parents were trying to cut corners and send their child as a package rather than buying them a ticket.
To the extent that finally, on June the 14th, 1913, the postmaster officially decreed children could no longer be sent through the mail.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't stop people from continuing to abuse the Postal Service to send humans, including themselves. Comparatively recently, in 1980, a guy called William de Lucia packaged himself up in a trunk labelled musical instruments, along with food and an oxygen tank. And once he was airborne in the freight plane that he'd climbed onto, he got out and pilfered thousands of dollars worth of goods from the registered mail that other people were sending, and then he sealed himself back up. But he was actually arrested at Atlanta Airport after his trunk popped open as it was being unloaded.
And in case you're wondering if there was a British equivalent of William de Lucia, there was a W. Reginald Bray, who was an accountant from Forest Hill. He posted himself successfully within Britain in 1900, then again in 1903, and for a last time time he enjoyed it so much in 1932. Once he dug up a turnip outside a post office in Ireland and carved the address into its flesh to see if that would reach its destination. By the time of his death at the age of 60 in 1939, he's thought to have put 30,000 items into the mail.
Yeah, two other people also posted themselves in the UK, though with a bit more of a purpose rather than just for the lols of it. In 1909, two suffragettes, Ms. Solomon and Ms. McClellan, used the Royal Mail's same-day courier service to post themselves to 10 Downing Street because they wanted to deliver a message personally to the Prime Minister at the time, Herbert Asquith. But a Downing Street official refused to sign for them, and the delivery boy then had to return the women and explain to his bosses why he had failed to make a delivery.
I mean, nowadays they would have just tossed them both in a wheelie bin.
This is true.
Left the card on the doorstep.
Tomorrow.
Without rest, the vast bosom of the seas to come to his feet and pay him humble homage.
Thank you for your continued support of the show. You can ask your smart speaker for the Retrospectors Today in History. Neat, huh?